You're lying in bed on a Saturday afternoon. The light is soft through the curtains. Your body is still. Your phone is face down on the nightstand. And inside your chest, there's a tightness that won't let go. Because you're not working. You're not being productive. You're not catching up on anything. You're just resting. And somehow, that feels like the most irresponsible thing you could possibly be doing. This is the paradox that haunts so many adults who live with depth and sensitivity. You know you're tired. You can feel the exhaustion in your bones, in the weight behind your eyes, in the way even small tasks feel monumental. But the moment you actually stop, the moment you give yourself permission to rest, a voice rises up inside you. You should be doing something. Everyone else is moving forward. You're wasting time. You're falling behind. For you, rest doesn't feel like relief. It feels like failure. And that's not because you're lazy. It's not because you lack discipline or ambition. It's because somewhere along the way, you internalized a belief that your worth is directly tied to your output. That being still means being stagnant. That rest is something you have to earn, and you never quite earn enough. The truth is, most people don't struggle with rest the way you do. For many, rest is simple. They finish their work, they turn off, they recharge, and they move on. There's no guilt, no mental accounting, no sense that they're betraying some invisible standard. But for you, rest comes with a cost. Every hour you spend lying down, reading, staring out the window, or doing nothing registers in your mind as time you could have spent being useful. And useful in this world has come to mean visible, productive, measurable, impressive to others. There's a particular kind of exhaustion that comes with this. It's not just physical tiredness. It's the exhaustion of constantly monitoring yourself, of keeping a mental ledger of everything you've done and everything you haven't, of comparing your Saturday afternoon rest to someone else's Saturday afternoon productivity post on social media, of feeling like every moment of stillness is a moment of falling further behind in a race you never signed up for but can't seem to leave. And here's what makes it worse. You've probably tried to rest the right way. You've read the articles about self-care. You've tried the baths, the meditation apps, the Sunday resets. You've scheduled rest like it's another task on your to-do list. But scheduled rest doesn't work when the problem isn't time management. The problem is that you don't believe you deserve to rest unless you've done enough. And enough is a finish line that keeps moving. Seneca, the Stoic philosopher, wrote extensively about time, not as a resource to be optimized, but as the substance of life itself. He said that we are not given a short life, but we make it short by wasting it. And yet, what he meant by wasting was not rest. It was living according to other people's priorities. It was spending your days in performance, in distraction, in busyness that serves no real purpose. Seneca would say that rest, true rest, is not a failure to act. It's a refusal to be used. It's the decision to reclaim your time from the endless demands of a world that will always ask for more. But here's the part almost no one explains. The guilt you feel when you rest isn't really about rest at all. It's about the belief that you are always behind, that there is some invisible finish line everyone else has crossed, and you're still here, struggling, slow, stuck. And so rest feels dangerous. Because if you stop, even for a moment, the gap widens. The distance between where you are and where you should be grows larger. This is the tyranny of comparison. And it doesn't come from laziness. It comes from living in a world that constantly measures you against others, and from a mind that has learned to measure itself the same way. Think about how this shows up in your daily life. You finish a work project, and instead of feeling relief, you immediately think about the next one. You take a day off, and you spend it mentally cataloging everything you're not doing. You sit down to read a book, and within minutes, your mind is listing all the emails you should be answering. Even your hobbies, the things you supposedly do for enjoyment, start to feel like obligations. You can't just draw. You have to get better at drawing. You can't just go for a walk. You have to track your steps, optimize your route, make it count. Rest becomes impossible because nothing is ever just for its own sake. Everything has to serve a purpose. Everything has to move you forward. And when you finally collapse, too exhausted to do anything else, you don't experience rest as relief. You experience it as defeat. I used to believe that rest was something I could schedule, that if I worked hard enough, long enough, I would eventually reach a point where I could relax without guilt. But that point never came, because the guilt wasn't tied to how much I had done. It was tied to how much I believed I was supposed to be. I would finish a project and immediately feel the pressure of the next one. I would take a day off and spend it mentally cataloging everything I wasn't doing. I would lie down to rest and feel my chest tighten with the weight of invisible expectations. I remember one particular Sunday. I had worked 6 days straight. I was exhausted. My body was asking, no, demanding, rest. So I stayed in bed. I read. I stared at the ceiling. I did nothing. And the entire time, I felt like I was committing some kind of crime. Not because anyone was watching, not because anyone cared, but because I had internalized a voice that said rest was only acceptable if I had earned it. And I never felt like I had earned it enough. And then one afternoon, exhausted and unable to do anything else, I just stopped trying to justify it. I didn't rest because I had earned it. I rested because I needed it. And I let the guilt sit there, unresolved, like a guest I didn't invite but no longer had the energy to argue with. And something shifted, not all at once. But slowly, I began to notice that rest didn't make me fall apart. It didn't make me less capable. It didn't erase everything I had built. It just made me human again. Here's what most people misunderstand about rest. They think it's the absence of work. But rest is not emptiness. Rest is repair. When you rest, your nervous system recalibrates. Your mind processes what it couldn't process while you were moving. Your body rebuilds what was depleted. Your emotional reserves quietly refill. Neuroscience shows us that the brain doesn't stop working when we rest. It shifts into what's called the default mode network, a state where it integrates information, makes connections, processes emotions, and consolidates memories. This is when insight happens. This is when clarity emerges. This is when your mind does the deep work that productivity culture doesn't value because it can't be measured. Rest is not nothing. Rest is the foundation of everything. And yet, because it's invisible, because it doesn't produce anything you can point to or post about or measure, it feels like failure. This is the cruelty of a culture that only values what can be seen, that only respects effort when it's loud, visible, and quantifiable. Your rest doesn't show up on a resume. It doesn't get likes. It doesn't prove anything to anyone. But it keeps you alive. It keeps you sane. It keeps you capable of doing anything at all. Seneca also said this. It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste a lot of it. And the deepest waste, he believed, was not in rest, but in living as though your life belongs to someone else. When you rest out of guilt, you are not truly resting. You are performing rest while your mind continues to work, continues to judge, continues to measure. But when you rest, because you recognize that your body and mind are not machines, that they are living systems that require stillness to function, you are not failing. You are choosing life over performance. The Stoics had a concept called otium, a kind of rest that was not laziness, but active contemplation. Time spent in reflection, in thought, in the quiet cultivation of wisdom. It was considered essential, not a luxury, not something you did after everything else was finished, but a necessary part of a life well lived. Seneca believed that most people are not truly living. They are busy, they are distracted, they are performing, but they are not present. They are not thinking, they are not resting in the deepest sense. And so, they reach the end of their lives and realize they never actually lived them. Let's make some distinctions here, because this is where clarity becomes power. Rest is not laziness. Laziness is avoidance. It's the refusal to engage with what matters because it feels uncomfortable or difficult. Rest is the conscious choice to stop because continuing would deplete you beyond repair. Laziness runs from responsibility. Rest protects your capacity to meet it. You know the difference. You feel it in your body. Laziness feels like numbing. Rest feels like breathing. Rest is not giving up. Giving up is the belief that effort no longer matters, that nothing you do will make a difference. Rest is the recognition that effort requires recovery, that you cannot pour from an empty cup. That sustainable progress is built on cycles of exertion and renewal, not on relentless grinding. Athletes understand this. They know that muscles grow during rest, not during the workout. They know that overtraining leads to injury, not strength. Your mind and heart work the same way. Rest is not wasted time. Wasted time is time spent in distraction, in numbing, in activities that leave you feeling more drained than before. Rest is time spent in stillness, in quiet, in activities that restore your energy and reconnect you to yourself. Reading is rest. Walking without a destination is rest. Lying in bed and letting your mind wander is rest. Sitting in a park and watching the light change is rest. Scrolling for 3 hours while feeling worse is not rest. It's escape. And there's a difference. Escape is what you do when you can't bear to be with yourself. Rest is what you do when you finally allow yourself to be. Rest is not the same as doing nothing. Doing nothing can be rest, but it can also be avoidance, dissociation, or depression. The difference is in how it feels. Rest feels like relief, like your nervous system is finally allowed to settle, like you're giving yourself something you've been denying for too long. Avoidance feels like guilt, like you're hiding from something you know you need to face. You know which one you're experiencing. Your body knows. Your heart knows. So how do you actually rest without feeling like you're failing? First, you stop pretending that rest is something you earn. You don't earn the right to breathe. You don't earn the right to sleep. You don't earn the right to exist in a body that gets tired. Rest is not a reward for productivity. Rest is a biological necessity. You are not a machine. You are a living being, and living beings need rest the way they need food, water, and air. Second, you give yourself permission to rest badly. You don't have to rest perfectly. You don't have to meditate, journal, take a bath with candles, and emerge enlightened. Sometimes rest is lying on the couch, staring at the ceiling, feeling nothing in particular. And that's enough. Sometimes rest is messy. Sometimes it's boring. Sometimes it doesn't feel like anything at all. That doesn't mean it's not working. Third, you recognize that the guilt is not evidence that you're doing something wrong. It's evidence that you've been conditioned to believe your worth is tied to your output. And conditioning can be questioned. Every time the guilt rises, you can notice it. You can name it. You can say quietly to yourself, "This is the voice that was taught to me. It is not the truth." You don't have to fight it. You don't have to make it go away. You just have to stop believing it. Fourth, you build small rituals of rest that feel intentional, not accidental. Not because rest needs to be justified, but because intentionality helps your mind accept it. A cup of tea in the afternoon, made slowly, with attention. A walk with no purpose, no destination, no fitness tracker. 10 minutes of sitting in silence before bed, not meditating, just sitting. These are not indulgences. They are acts of self-preservation. They are ways of saying to yourself, "I matter. My well-being matters. My energy matters." Fifth, you start measuring your life differently. Not by how much you accomplished today, but by how present you were, how kind you were to yourself, how much space you gave your mind to breathe. Because productivity is not the same as aliveness, and rest is not the opposite of progress. Rest is what makes progress sustainable. What if, instead of asking, "What did I get done today?" you asked, "Did I treat myself with kindness today?" What if, instead of measuring your worth by your output, you measured it by your capacity to be present, to feel, to notice the world around you? The Stoics believed that the wise person is the one who lives in accordance with nature, not in the romantic sense of living in the woods, but in the sense of honoring the rhythms of life. And life has rhythms: day and night, effort and recovery, growth and stillness, expansion and contraction. To rest is not to resist life. To rest is to move with it. Winter is not a failure of summer. Night is not a failure of day. And rest is not a failure of productivity. It's part of the cycle. It's necessary. It's natural. And if you've spent years, maybe decades, believing that rest is something you have to justify, that stillness is something you have to earn, that your worth is measured by how much you produce, then this will take time. You won't unlearn it in a day. You won't read this and suddenly feel free. But you can start. You can start by resting today, even if the guilt is loud. You can start by noticing the voice that says you're failing and choosing not to believe it. You can start by treating rest not as a luxury, but as a practice of returning to yourself, a practice of remembering that you are not a machine, a practice of building a life that doesn't require you to be exhausted to feel valuable. Because here's the truth: the world will always ask more of you. There will always be more to do, more to achieve, more to prove. But your body, your mind, your heart, they have limits. And honoring those limits is not weakness, it's wisdom. Rest is not the absence of ambition. Rest is the presence of self-respect. It's the quiet, radical act of saying, I am enough, even when I am still. You are not falling behind when you rest. You are catching up to yourself. You are not failing at life. You are refusing to live a life that treats you like a resource to be extracted. And maybe, just maybe, rest is not something you do when everything else is finished. Maybe rest is how you remember that you are not here to be finished. You are here to be alive. There's a particular kind of peace that comes when you finally stop fighting your need for rest. When you stop trying to justify it, earn it, or perform it. It's the peace of finally being on your own side, of recognizing that the voice that tells you you're failing is not your voice. It's the voice of a culture that profits from your exhaustion. And you don't have to listen to it anymore. You can rest. You can be still. You can do nothing. And you can still be worthy. You can still be enough. You can still be living a life that matters. Not because of what you produce, but because of who you are. And who you are is someone who deserves rest. Not someday. Not when everything is finished. Not when you've finally done enough. Now. Today. In this moment. And if you've ever wondered why it feels so hard to be gentle with yourself, why self-compassion feels almost impossible even when you desperately need it, that's a different kind of story. One that unfolds in the next quiet conversation. Alone together. A quiet corner of the internet for people who choose solitude over half-hearted connections.